Hello, I'm Dr. Pierre Samaan, and it's great being back with you. We're continuing in our series, Parenting with Purpose. I hope you're enjoying this. We've been talking about achieving flexibility. Before we get into this next section, I want to remind you about the new book, Unmasking Addiction. Number 2, and the key message of the theme of the book, and there's so many messages in the book, and I feel obligated. I have to talk about it to let people know. You don't have to buy it, you don't have to read it, but it's a tool that can be used that can help if you want more understanding regarding substance addictions, behavioral addictions, any type of addiction. We cover that from start to finish, and I bring in the experts in the book, those experts that have done research. There's over 160 references in that book, and all those references give you an opportunity to do more research yourself, where you can look up these individuals and be able to study a little bit more if you want to, gain some more knowledge in what they have discovered in their studies, the things they feel are working and not working. These are practical tools and evidence-based strategies for addictions. And if you're a family member, a friend, co-worker, or even if you have issues with some type of obsessive compulsive behavior that you've been having trouble pulling away from, well, maybe this will be a tool that'll be helpful for you, along with the many other wonderful tools that are out there. So many good books on the subject. The book provides actionable tools and scientifically supported methods. So it's not just me speaking in the book. It's the scientists, it's the researchers that have come up with those studies, those discoveries. Here's another way to do this. Here's a better way to do that. Here's an option that they found up to this point. And I'm sure there's going to be more discoveries as time goes by. But the old methods didn't work very well. And now the new methods that they're trying out in these treatment centers and all that, they're having more successes. And I hope that it'll be helpful for you in realizing that as well. Emphasizing the practical and evidence-based aspects is what I'm doing in the book that ensures readers to understand that the book is spiritually enriching and grounded in proven recovery techniques. A faith-based approach to recovery. Well, let's get back to parenting with purpose. Essential qualities of effective parenting has been the general subject that we've been talking about. Previously, we've spoke about empathy in parenting. We discussed consistency in parenting. And previously, patience in parenting. And patience, that's a lot of work. And so it took several videos for that one. And today we're talking about achieving flexibility in parenting. What are the parenting styles that have come about through the years up to our point? And next time we're gonna look at God parenting. What's God parenting style? We're going to take a look at that the next time, and then after that we'll get into the attitudes of necessary successful parenting. So achieving flexibility in parenting it's something we have to have a little humor when we're parenting. We don't want to be too serious. You ever watch those videos? I don't know what they call them, those shorts where the little dog is pulling a rubber band with its mouth, and it has the end of the rubber band on one of its paws, and it lets go and it knocks over something, and he just does one after the other. I don't know if that's fake or if it's real. It looks real and it's humorous, but parents kind of have to be a little bit like that too. So you can ask the question, why do successful parents always carry a rubber band? Well, so they can stretch their plans when children throw them curveballs. And that's very true. Kids are always throwing you a curveball that, oh, where did that come from? Or how in the world did that happen? And we did it when we were kids to our parents, and our kids are doing it to us. And maybe that's the curse of the parent, when the parent says, wait till you're a parent and this happens to you and you'll get payback. And I can remember that as well. And that happens. Well, achieving flexibility, introduction of flexibility will be our first little talk here. But we're going to get into these, and I'm going to go a little quickly because I'd like to cover all these in this session. So next time we'll be able to talk about what is God parenting style? What does the Bible say about that? And I kind of put some things together there as looking at God as a parent in the Bible and what does it reveal. So today we'll be talking about autocratic parenting style, the permissive parenting style. We're just going to touch on these. I'm writing a book, and in the book I'll get into more details in all of this, but just to highlight on these to understand there have been different parenting styles and things have changed. And it doesn't mean that they're perfect or they're right, that any one is right over the other, but the time period, the environment, the world situations, the technology, and all that has changed parenting, has required there to be more of a flexibility in parenting, an adjustment in the way we parent our children. So autocratic, permissive parenting, uninvolved parenting has always been there, but more so as a result of permissive parenting style. Authoritative parenting style was also in the picture that we'll be talking about. And then the current day, what I call the digital parenting style. And that is still kind of overwhelming on what do we do? Be adaptable in parenting. That's important. We need to think about adaptability. While consistency and patience are vital in parenting, embracing flexibility is equally crucial. This approach allows parents to tailor their methods to suit each child's needs and personalities. And it's great if you grew up in a home where you had perfect parents. I'm using the term in general, there's no parent that's perfect, but they did a good job with you. They raised you well and you turned out well and all's good. That's great. Now you have a model, and you're going to parent your kids more than likely pretty much along the same guidelines as your parents may have parented you. However, if you didn't have that good fortune of having good role models as parents, then you're going to make adjustments or not. You're going to do the same thing, and you're going to make the same mistakes. Or you may think you're not making the same mistakes, but because you're doing something similar, you just made an adjustment to it, it turns out the same way. Or perhaps you were an only child and you only experienced your perspective of the results of your parenting. But if you were a child and you had 3 or 4 other siblings and each one is different, they're going to react differently to the same modeling that you had. Flexibility in parenting refers to the ability to adjust to one's parenting style and techniques to respond to the changing needs and changing circumstances of life, but of the child as well. We go through our phases, don't we, as children, and in those phases we're changing. Parents, the way they parent may need to be more adaptable and flexible to adjust to our changes at each stage along the way. According to research, flexible parenting is associated with positive child outcomes, including better emotional regulation, social competence, and resilience. So in other words, being flexible looks like it's a good thing, not a bad thing. It looks like it's working. But like anything else, some people take those things and they run with it and go too far and they exaggerate it. So we're not talking about the exaggerated. We're talking about, let's keep it within reason. This adaptability involves being open to change, willing to listen, and ready to modify expectations or rules when needed. Sometimes, okay, this will work when you're 6 years old, but it's not going to work when you're 10 years old, so you have to adapt, you have to modify. And certainly it's not going to work when you're 15 or 16 years old. Now we've got to adapt a little more and modify. But if you don't, if you keep it at a strict, inflexible parenting style as it was when they were 5 or 6 years old, there's going to be big trouble in the teen years. For instance, a parent might enforce a strict bedtime rule during the school year, but allow more leniency during holidays or weekends. That's flexibility. Doesn't mean you're going to let them sleep whenever they want and get up whenever they want the whole time. That would be the exaggerated version of flexibility. But flexibility within reason is just what I said there. This type of flexibility helps children feel a sense of structure while assisting them to understand that life circumstances can shift and require different approaches. So you're teaching them flexibility in giving a reasonable amount of flexibility yourself. It teaches them to adapt to change and fosters a sense of security, knowing their parents are responsive to their needs. You don't understand me. How often have you heard that? Well, I understand you, but let's stay within the boundaries or the plan that we've always had. And you go to bed at a certain time for school nights, and on the weekend we can be a little flexible, and you don't have to do that. Parenting styles have evolved significantly over the last century and reflects the changes in societies and culture, in world situations, the stress, as stress increases, the way people parent will change as well because they're stressed. Some parents become more constricted in the way they parent because they feel out of control out there. In the home, they're in control now, so they over control. Other parents may feel stressed out there and come home and be more flexible so they can feel more at ease, more at peace, so whatever goes, so they become more permissive. And then you have other parents who handle it much better. But there's that flexibility going on there that we have to look at and say, well, what's working, what's reasonable? Let's not just do what the other person is doing. If they're jumping off a cliff, we don't want to jump off the cliff as well. Cultural shifts that occur, psychological and developmental advances also make differences, and we'll be talking about that a little bit. Autocratic model is in the 50s, before the 50s, pre-1950s, autocratic. What's the autocratic? It's dictatorial. Yeah, that's kind of the way you look at the movies, you see the parenting in the movies from the past, or you read the history books and you see much of the parenting. Well, pretty much autocratic type parenting. So historically in the early 20th century, parenting was often characterized by this strict dictatorial model. In this model, parents maintain that rigid control, so rules and regulation and punishment, not discipline, punishment. Rigid control over their children with little room for negotiation and flexibility. So what does that do to the children? Well, it's going to put them in a box, and even if they don't fit that box, they're in the box. They don't thrive. And as they get older, their temperaments may be very different, but they've been put in a box to model the temperament of the parent, and now they're having trouble adjusting to life out there, getting along and succeeding. Focus was on obedience and I have their discipline, but it wasn't so much discipline as punishment. And the parent's role was primarily that of authority figure rather than authority, nurturer, and role model or guide. When I say there's a difference between discipline and punishment, if we look at punishment, punishment is that Roman imperial law of you do something wrong, you're going to suffer for it. Discipline is you do something wrong, Let's learn why you did it, and let's figure out how not to do it again. And so you set more boundaries, or you give more lessons, or you may give some restrictions. But it doesn't mean you have to beat them. It doesn't mean you have to do things to inflict pain on them. An example of that in the early 20th century, that flexibility in parenting, is they would look at flexibility as a weakness. If you're weak, then you got to be stronger. That's weakness. You got to set the boundaries tight and give the punishment. We can look in our history today and look back in societies around the world. And in many societies that still have that dictatorial concept of parenting, what do you see in the people that are in those societies? Now, you may see something different than I see or somebody else sees, so I'm going to let you, figure that out yourself. What do you see when you look at those people or countries or societies that still use that rigid dictatorial rule of parenting? How did it turn out? What are the people like in those societies? Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they mean? Are they nice? Or what? What's the turnout? So take a look at that yourself. Figure it out. Analyze it. What makes sense? And you be the judge on that in determining it. Parents believe that rigid structures and painful discipline would best prepare children in those types of societies for the harsh realities of life. So they thought they were doing the right thing, and perhaps they were way back when, in the Bible days certainly, when there was no they were still children, you might say, in society, in maturing, in growing, in experience. There had to be more rules. There had to be more regulations. There had to be stronger consequences, you might say. This view aligns with Proverbs 13:24, which states, "He who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is careful to," again, the word, "discipline him, not punish him." Some of the translations may say punish, or using the rod. The rod in the translation also stands for shepherd's staff. The shepherd's staff wasn't used to beat the children, the sheep. It was used to protect the sheep from the wild animals. It was used to grab the sheep and guide them, prod them along. But the translations often use the rod, and we interpret it as a stick that you spank them with. No, let's look a little deeper in some of those translations, and what's the Hebrew, what are the other meanings of those words? The rigid interpretation of this verse, influenced by earlier Roman legal traditions, so much of our customs today are based on the Roman law, the Roman imperial law of things, often justified harsh, non-negotiable methods of discipline or punishment. Well, then, after that comes the 1950s to 1970s, and that's introduction of the permissive styles, post-war era. Now, this isn't me identifying these things. This is what the research is saying. So this is what the researchers have identified and brought into our knowledge base of what were the trends at these times and what were the examples. So the post-World War II era marked a turning point in societal norms, including parenting. And I thought back then, and I was born in 1949, and so my parents had gone through the wartime period, and they moved to this country when I was a year old, so that was 1950. And their parenting style was I would say not permissive, but survival, getting ahead, new country, new experiences, taking their experiences and building and growing in their lifestyle today, at that time, I mean. And so when that occurs, it's going to be a little different, but I would say it was more permissive, yet within boundaries that were healthy, that made sense, you might say. As the Western world entered a period of prosperity and psychological nuances, they started thinking more about what's going on up here and what's the result of all that. Well, they started learning some things, and it doesn't mean it was all right, but they were learning more. So the researchers like Benjamin Spock wrote his book on nurturing and parenting. And I remember my wife and I, Linda and I, when we first became parents, we got the Dr. Spock book and we read the book and we thought, no, this isn't going to work. This isn't right. But a lot of parents, they followed that model, and in following that model, the permissive style of parenting grew. I think for some that might work for you. For others, well, you have to be the judge of that. So in the 1950s and 60s, parents experimented with that permissive model. And while discipline was still necessary, there was a growing understanding that children needed to express themselves, and that fostering individuality was crucial for healthy development. Nothing wrong with that, is there? That makes sense. That's logical. Yeah, let them express. Let them. They'll thrive more. They'll benefit more, and they're going to gain their own identity. They don't have to be like dad, or they don't have to be like mom. They can be their own unique self. So yeah, that makes sense. Parents who adopted this new approach were more likely to be flexible, however, allowing children to voice their opinions and influence family dynamics. As often the case, it often went too far. Flexibility is good, but if you don't have boundaries to flexibility, people will take it too far. Those who don't have that sense of what's right and wrong, good and bad, well, it goes too far. Or those people who weren't raised in a certain way where there were those boundaries, it goes too far. Or there may be other reasons where then it's taken too far. But what came along with the permissive parenting is the uninvolved parenting style, which was always there. All through the generations, there's always parents that were just uninvolved. But we saw that more so as a result of the permissive style of parenting. Having always been on the scene and sharing many permissive parenting traits, the uninvolved parenting just became more visible. Uninvolved parenting, also referred to as neglectful parenting, is a harmful approach to raising children characterized by the absence of emotional connection and little to no expectations or guidance from parents. My parents, I would say, were flexible, a little bit uninvolved because they were business people. So they built a motel on the beach in Daytona Beach when they first moved to this country, and a lot of their energy and time was on building and working hard, and I was allowed flexibility, which at times may have felt a bit neglectful until dinner time. Now, dinner time, things changed, and I got the attention. But I roamed the beach, I roamed the motel, I was swimming all day long and all that, so I had a good old time. We lived in the motel for a number of years, and it was a playground for me. So that made a difference. But I look back on it and I think, yeah, there could have been a little more structure there during the day. So this parenting style often leaves the child feeling unsupported and unvalued, as parents fail to provide that nurturing care and structured boundaries necessary for healthy development. When I look back and I accepted the Lord into my life when I was 23 years old, 24 years old, almost immediately what came to my mind, and everybody's a little different when that occurs. Some people it's gradual, some people it's right away, and I had a kind of a right away experience. And all of a sudden there was this sense of I belong. And I never thought of that before. I'm 23 years old and never thought that I didn't feel like I belonged before that. And I realized I never felt like I belonged. I never felt the value of belonging until I accepted Christ into my life. And as the Bible would say, I'm saved, or new creation and transformation, heart transformation, heart and mind transformation. I belong. Wow. And then I had to look back. Why do I think that? Why did that come up and all that? And I look at this, and as I was doing this, I thought, yeah, that makes more sense now. Rise of authoritative and flexible parenting would be the modern parenting style from the 80s to the 2000s. So that's just near us. We're beyond that now, and we'll talk about that. But 80s to the 2000s, they called it the modern parenting style. Modern doesn't mean good, but it was modern as the next step up, next level, that rise of authoritative and flexible. So they put it together. By the 80s and 90s, research into child development and psychology had thoroughly shifted how parents approached flexibility. Developmental psychologists like Diana Baumrind introduced the concept of authoritative parenting, which balanced firm expectations with warmth and responsiveness. So there was nurture, there was modeling, there was guidance, and it put that together with the authority, the structure. This model represented a substantial shift from previous generations, blending structure with flexibility. So as an example, this flexibility allows parents to recognize that each child is different and may require different methods, different ways of disciplining, again, not punishment, but disciplining, encouragement, and guidance. Each child's different. Now, at that point, we started to say each child's different, so you're going to have to be a little more flexible in how you relate this to this child, how that child relates, and so on. Use that flexibility in there, and it worked out well. Parents in this era embraced concepts like active listening, negotiation, collaborative problem solving. Again, there are those that take it too far, and that's never good. But within the healthy boundaries, within the healthy structure, then it works well. Unlike the early 20th century, the autocratic style or dictatorial model, modern parents began to emphasize that adaptability. They understood that strict adherence to rules without considering the child's individuality could be counterproductive. Did it work? Well, you be the judge of that. Now, part of the problem with modern parenting, one of the difficulties of modern parenting was they took God out of the schools. Taking God out of the schools was basically not so much you can't pray, or you can't talk about God, or you can't this or that. It took a healthy structure away, a healthy model away. What model was left? And then we saw within 3 to 5 years, if you look at the graphs, crime and everything else, drug abuse and all that, began to do that in the graphs and skyrocket. Was that because they took God out of the schools? Well, you be the judge. What happened just before that that may have brought about that change? Was there a structure that was taken away, a healthy model that was taken away, a way of setting boundaries was taken away, but not replaced with anything healthier, better? Well, that's going to cause difficulties. If you take something away, you have a void. If you don't replace it with something better, you can replace it with something worse. The void is going to cause worse things to happen. But if you don't replace it with anything, then something is going to fill it in. And what that something was, you be the judge of that. Well, 2000s to the present, they call it, they have different names for it, but I think the consensus seems to be digital age parenting. That fluidity of roles, it's mom and dad roles are kind of fluid now at this point. Parenting roles are much more fluid. You kind of go with the flow of what's happening. So the digital age has transformed parenting into unprecedented ways. The rise of technology, the access to information, it's expanded both the roles of parents and children and the world views. Children, I don't know if we could say, are they more intelligent? Are they smarter? Certainly they're more knowledgeable because the access of the computer and the internet, and they're learning things much sooner than we learned things when we were young. So they have a grasp of all this. However, their brains haven't changed in that the capability of the 6-year-old, the 9-year-old, the 16-year-old, and even the 20-year-old, that capability remains the same. That is, the brain structure, the new parts of the brain that are forming as you develop, that stays the same. So you can add technology stuff, the information that comes in along with it and all that, and they may pack in more information, but how do you use it? How do you experience it if the brain is only so big, it can only handle so much? So then interpretation becomes a serious consideration. How do you interpret all that information if you don't have the capability of interpreting it as much as you could if you had the bigger capability of more access to more neurons and brain cells and whatever else, pathways by age 25 and up in adulthood? So perhaps emotions now become stronger. Emotions, you become more influential, more easily influenced through emotions because you don't know what to do with that information. You be the judge of that. The rise of technology and access to information has expanded both parents' and children's worldview, making adaptability and flexibility in parenting even more essential. In other words, this is a nice way of saying it's tougher. It's not easier. Today's parents face challenges previous generations could not have imagined, from managing screen time to navigating the impacts of social media on the mental health of the child, of the teenager, to everything else. I've got adolescents that, because of the texting, because of the emailing, perhaps in broken homes, and whatever's coming in that's serially coming in that shouldn't be. It drives them bonkers. And it's too much information that their brain isn't designed to hold that much information. What happens? The emotions take over. They drop into the basement of the brain, as we've talked about in the past, the bottom part of the brain where your limbic system is, your fight, flight, freeze center is located. They drop into that. Fear takes over, apprehension or worry takes over, self-protection takes over, which is selfishness. When you use self-protective, you're thinking of yourself, so you become selfish. Anger takes over, depression, anxiety, suicide, and the other. All that takes over because they can't handle it. It's too much. So emotions take over and they drop down there. How do you keep them up top? How do you keep them up upstairs in the upper room where the good thinking is located, as we've spoken of before? Well, now you need to do some kind of structure to get them up there and helping them to stay up there, or if they drop down, to bounce back up there as quickly as possible. What gives them that? Well, from a Christian perspective, church, children's church, youth church, Bible studies, fellowship, healthy activities, that helps get them back up there as quickly as possible. Maybe you don't belong to a church. Maybe you're not a Christian, or you belong to another faith or something. Well, you still have to do the same thing. You still got to get them back up there somehow. So do what works. Do whatever is good in helping your child to get back up there and to bounce back as quickly as possible from this deluge that's coming in, turning them into emotional, I don't know what word to use, just emotional beings where now they're easily influenced by the tide of emotions coming at them. Parents have to navigate that complex, fast-changing environment of the digital age, balancing that technology and mental health concerns and the shifting that goes on. So they have to be flexible in disciplinary methods and understand their children's cognitive, emotional, and spiritual needs as they grow up, highly connected and rapidly evolving world. A biblical perspective on this shift can be found in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6, where it says, train, and this is the Amplified Version, train up a child in the way he should go, teaching him to seek God's wisdom and will for his abilities and talents. Even when he's old, he'll not depart from it. He's not going to forget it, in other words. He'll remember, gee, when I bounced back up there as a child and felt good in Sunday school or felt good in children's church or had a good time with the group at teenage church, and gee, okay, I remember that. You know, how do I get back to that? How do I become more spiritual again to be up here and not so unhappy down there? This verse speaks to the importance of guiding children, not punishing them to go in that direction, because what are they going to do? They're going to rebel from that. Guiding them is leading. It's setting the example. It's guiding children in ways that align with their unique paths, acknowledging that parenting in the modern world requires flexibility, adaptability approach to meet those needs of the child. Flexibility is adaptability. Parents have to remain adaptable as society grapples the ongoing changes, such as advancements in artificial intelligence, increasing mental health awareness, and globalizations and complexities. Increasing health awareness, I just want to touch on the fact that mental health issues among adolescents has skyrocketed. Why? Well, you be the judge of that. The reality, though, is, the fact is, it's skyrocketed. Something is wrong there. What's wrong? How do we fix it? come up with that solution on how to fix it. Don't just blame this person or that school or that situation. What are you going to do to help fix that so that doesn't happen with your kids? The importance of flexibility will likely grow as parents seek to balance providing guidance and allowing their children autonomy, and increasingly in this increasingly unprecedented world. So next time we're going to look at God parenting style. Just a brief look at what is God's parenting style. And I looked in the Bible and I kind of put some things together just to see what you think as we look at that, and then we'll get into the attitudes of parenting after that. Well, I hope you got something out of this today. May your troubles be minor, blessings more, and happiness come through your door. Please give us a like. Helps keep me motivated to see, oh, there's a like. I know when I watch videos, oftentimes I forget to do that, and I go, oh, you know, I like that. Oh, I forgot to do that. So if you think about it, if you got something, don't do it if you didn't get anything out of this, but if you got something out of it, please give us a like. Thank you. God bless. We'll see you next time.